to the entertainment Talking Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Gonna have a few more up of these, draft profile videos up for you guys over the coming days. I wanted to jump around a little bit because one guy that I'm really looking forward to when I did some research, who I think could actually carve out a niche on this year's roster in terms of being a situational pass rusher. Now, by no means do I think he's going to be an every down player for this football team, but could come in on those third and longs when Patrick Graham institutes 5 or 6 pass rushers on there at the same time. I think that Carter Coughlin could very well be that guy, and maybe the New York Giants got a steal in the early 7th round of this year's draft. Now, I'm definitely going to get into some of his weaknesses because he certainly has them. There's a reason that Carter Coughlin went in the 7th round, but I think he has a bright future potentially with the New York Giants. He has what the New York Giants look for. I think he has some upside, and he definitely has some smarts. He was on the all-academic Big Ten team, I believe, the last 3 years, so that's something that the New York Giants definitely look for. Another interesting side note that I was able to find out about him, he actually caught balls in high school from a player on our football team. Ryan Conley was his high school quarterback. And now they'll be playing with each other in the same linebacking course. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But Carter Coughlin was definitely a guy that the New York Giants targeted. He's definitely a guy that has had some success well at Minnesota as a pass rusher. We're going to get into that as well. He definitely dropped off in terms of production in his senior year. Why that is? Well, I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure I'll do some film study on some of these guys when I get the opportunity. In his junior year, he really stood out. And I'm going to jump into a very interesting statistic comparing him to other edge rushers in the Big Ten in his junior season. The reason he fell, well, I think it's simple. He's definitely a little bit small in stature for the position, and he has very short arms. In terms of being an athlete, he's pretty quick. He ran, I think, a 4.57 40, but we're going to get into all the exact figures in a second. But he's a guy I really like, and he's a guy that I think Joe Judge could carve out a niche for on this football team and maybe find a role, and maybe he'll be able to get some sacks for the New York Giants. We all know the New York Giants do not have a supreme pass rusher on this football team. It's going to kind of be, sacks as a team. They're going to, try to create sacks from blitzing the secondary, getting pressure up the middle with that strong defensive line, and in situational and third and long situations, having multiple pass rushers out on the football field. And I expect Carter Coughlin, if he does make the team, to be one of those guys to be playing in situations like a 3rd and 8, like a 3rd and 10, when you know the opposition is going to have to pass, because he does have speed to get after the quarterback. But let's jump into some of the things I was able to pull up about Carter Coughlin out of Minnesota. First thing I wanted to show you guys was this. Now, I saw conflicting reports on his height and weight. This is what he measured in at the combine. I've seen 6'4", 245. He was 6'3", 236, 31 3/8 on the arm, which is really small. We're going to get into exactly how small later in this video. 9.5 on the hands. Played at Minnesota. From what I read, I think that's where his dad played. He stayed at home, had offers from other major colleges, but decided to stay at home and play for Minnesota, where he had a great collegiate career. And here's his numbers. Played there for 4 years. Really came on in his sophomore season, where he had 6.5 sacks, 11.5 tackles for loss, 37 combined tackles, 1 forced fumble. His junior year is where he really stood out. He had 48 combined tackles, 15 for a loss, 9.5 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. Last year, he took a little bit of a step back. 49 combined tackles, which was his career high, but only 4.5 sacks, 9.5 tackles for a loss, 3 forced fumbles. Now, the reason for that, I'm not 100% sure. One other thing I want to point out, he did have 4 pass deflections, which he had none of the 3 previous seasons. So maybe he was used more in coverage. That is possible, and that is one thing that I read up on him that the Giants liked about him, that he is versatile, that he does have experience of dropping back in coverage, and he could very well be a very strong special teams contributor, which is the reason that we brought on his former high school quarterback, Ryan Conley, last year initially, and Conley played well and showed that he could be an every down linebacker if given the opportunity, or at least has the potential to be. This was a really interesting stat I pulled up from PFF that I found on the internet after his junior season. They compared him to all the Big Ten edge rushers after the 2018 season. This is not after 19, but look at some of the names on this list. You're talking about the number 2 overall pick, Chase Young, A.J. Epinesa, who at one point was considered a top 10, 15 pick, was a second-round pick. Zach Bond, a second-round pick. He had the highest grade out of any of them. For the totality of his junior season in the Big Ten, he had a grade of 92.1 on a minimum of 200 pass rush snaps. Chase Young ranked in at 91.2, Epinesa at 90.2, Zach Bond all the way down at 81.8. So he certainly showed the ability well at college to be a very productive edge rusher when given the opportunity. And I do think if the Giants could carve out a certain role for him, he may be very productive. In terms of what he did at the Combine, definitely showed off the speed a little bit with a 4.57 40 time. Pretty good for an edge rusher. 36 on the vert, 126 on the broad. Those are the things that he participated in. This is what Joe Judge had to say about him, and he definitely fits the theme. A guy with some upside, a guy with smarts, a guy that's versatile, and that's basically what Joe Judge had to say. The theme of the day was speed, Judge said. Coughlin is a guy that gives us more speed on the edge. He brings some length with him. He plays with a high motor and a lot of aggressiveness. He was productive in Minnesota's scheme, and with the way we are going to play guys on the edge in different packages, he's someone with a lot of value. He will come in here and he will compete. And I think he will. And I think he's going to make the team. And I think of all the late round picks, I think he has the highest probability of carving out some kind of niche. In terms of some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses that I was able to find, great burst and lateral agility. Able to fake out offensive tackle on an outside move and beat them inside. Has the raw tools to transform into an off-the-ball linebacker. Hard to block on stunts. Multi-year starter with plenty of production. Solid football IQ, typically fills the right gap in run support. In terms of the weaknesses, undersized for a down lineman and will probably need to be an off-the-ball linebacker at the next level, which is obvious. If you're going to weigh 240 pounds, you're not playing, up at the line. He's going to be an outside linebacker that's going to be used in coverage and to get after the quarterback. Most of his reps came outside the tackle, so positional adjustment could be a process. Doesn't have much strength to his game, struggles to keep contained when on the edge, 19th percentile in arm length. So incredibly short arms for a man of his position. Probably can't be pushed inside on passing downs. So those are some of his strengths, some of his weaknesses, and obviously he's going to have some flaws to his game, which is why the Giants were able to get him where they did. And then finally, a complete overview of Carter Coughlin. Small edge defender who plays with high football IQ and motor to help create impact production. Coughlin is a proactive rusher who mixes up his approach to access the edge, but he'll need to develop his hands and play with leverage to beat NFL tackles. He may be between positions due to a lack of size and suddenness, so shining as a core special teamer is essential. And that goes without saying. I mean, when you're a 7th-round pick, you better shine as a special teams player, especially when you're playing for Joe Judge, something that he definitely is going to be looking at. And I do think Carter Coughlin could very well fill that role. But I do think, like I said, of all the late-round picks from the 6th round and on, I think Carter Coughlin has the best chance to at least fill some kind of role on the defense. Will he be playing every down? No. He's undersized. I think he's limited, but I do think he could be a situational pass rusher that could help the New York Giants get after the pass rusher. That's something that the New England Patriots have done year in and year out. Find guys and, with things that they're good at and get the most out of it. And I think that's what Joe Judge was trying to do with this pick. He's not a first-round talent. He's not a second-round talent. We got him in the beginning of the 7th round. Do I think he could have went a little bit earlier? Yes, based on some of his production throughout college. But the ceiling is rather limited. But I do think the Giants will find a role for him, and I think he could very well be productive for this football team in the future. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.